Spiritual awakening is a bitch. I dig into this with my guest, Kurtis Gabriel, who is a former NHL player, a professional hockey player, who is in the middle of this journey for himself right now. It's a truly vulnerable conversation between two people on the journey of walking each other home on the path back to finding ourselves. We talk about the path of maximal responsibility and what it means to walk it, our plant medicine journeys, what it means to be in service, and transcending our judgments of others by seeing it in ourselves. This is one of the most fulfilling conversations I've had on the show, and it takes a deep amount of courage on Kurtis's part to show up and share where he's at in his journey while still in the abyss. Whether you are conscious curious and starting down the path of spiritual awakening, deep in the shit, or you find yourself already on the other side. This episode has valuable insight for every part of the path. So sit back, settle in, and enjoy this episode of Hard for Life.
You are listening to the Hard for Life podcast with Thomas Scott.
Kurtis, it's a pleasure to have you on the Hard for Life podcast. I'm so grateful. And I am excited to open up the field with you. We had a call ahead of time about this. And one of the things you shared is that you are really in the middle of a spiritual awakening. And to take the listener on a ride on what that's like, because I've been there myself. And I think what would be really helpful is to start with your story. How did you get here, and where is here for you right now?
Yeah, so here for me right now is a 31-year-old back at his mom's place, going through a very large life transition in a very short period of time, retiring from professional hockey, having a serious relationship, and moving back from living in the U.S. and having a whole new unknown path ahead of me. And through that whole time, through the suffering of hockey, my last year of hockey being real tough, and then retiring, that suffering really pushing me to realizing there's got to be more to this thing, because the old saying is people change when they realize that staying the same is scarier than changing. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at now, but I don't know how far you want me to go back into like the story of how I got here, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I would love to know what happened with your hockey career that's catapulted you into this field of deep uncertainty. Because I imagine you're not alone in people having experienced a life trajectory that they thought was like their life's purpose and where they were going, and then got derailed. Yeah,
absolutely. So, growing up, I played all different sports, and right when I started to kind of get better at hockey, when I was 10 years old, I lost my dad to suicide, and he was my real confidence behind me in hockey. He had a gambling addiction, probably had some other things. He reached out to our family doctor, but didn't make it to the first appointment. He couldn't wait. So for me, that was like playing the highest level at 10 years old, and who knows, maybe it could turn into something 6 years down the road. But it was just very, very innocent to beginning. But after that, I went back, and after his death, I went and played just hockey for fun again. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then all of a sudden at 16, not thinking about playing, I'm not playing at the highest level. And my mom just said, "Hey, all your friends are trying out for the local junior A team. What if you go try out?" And I said, "Really? Like, I didn't think that was a possibility." She's like, "Well, there's only $50, so might as well go try it. Your buddies are." And so I did that, and it just went well. Like, it just somehow just went well, and I fell into this trajectory that it just came out of the blue. It almost felt like a random, or I don't know how else to call it. It just kind of felt given to me, and almost like just worked out for me. And I don't know if that set the tone later that I felt entitled about things, but it just kind of happened. And I went on this meteoric rise from, playing at a low level of hockey to then playing in the OHL, the highest level, in 2 years. And then 2 years after that, getting drafted in the NHL. And I think that was in my like dharma at the time. Like, that was just pure love to compete, love to play this game that I love, and there was no other expectation other than being in the present moment. And I was that naive kind of beginner gains almost, you know. And then I started to have adversity and stuff. But getting drafted in NHL, people start putting expectations on you. You kind of, you got to move down to the U.S. on your own. You have all these new expectations and possibilities, and I think it started to really hit me when I was 22. Those expectations really started to weigh on me, and that's also when I believe the bipolar, because I'm diagnosed with bipolar type 2, those symptoms kind of started to present of just carrying a piano on my back all the time and just going from being super high energy, hypomanic to depressed and having to ride that wave and not know, you know, I thought it was just, and it is my double-edged sword of, you know, that's what makes me good, but it also, you know, what is my great superpower also pulls me back. So throughout my career of just making it to the NHL, and then I would drop down again, making it to the NHL, drop down again. And a pro hockey career is already a roller coaster, but for me, it was even more highs and lows. And so I did that for 8 years playing pro of just up and down. And then my last year was really when my wrist started bothering me more and more. And you obviously have to hide it. I was a player that was a year-to-year contracts. If I had taken a year off to rehab a wrist, it probably wouldn't have gone too well for me. So I just went with the all gas method and just give her everything I have. And then eventually cortisone shots and stuff weren't doing it anymore. And I just felt like at 29, I should just pack it in. I had 2 serious injuries, both to this part of my wrist. And that's just kind of what was in the cards for me. But it happened very suddenly. So you could obviously see how that would be a big wake-up call.
Yeah. Yeah, what happened for you when that wake-up call came through? Like, what was your experience? How did it hit you? What were the emotions?
Yeah, I guess it was just this slow unraveling since I did mushrooms with my brother like 5 years into my 5 years into my pro career, and that planted a seed. Yeah, but I didn't want to I was like, oh, there's something more, and I believe in going from a straight kid raised with nothing and full-on atheist to believing the only thing about my life is to be materialistic and just get what's mine and play hockey at the highest level and be the best hockey player and nothing else matters, to then the cracks start coming through in the eggshell. You start to kind of feel like this doesn't seem like what life's all about. If this is crumbling around me and my identity and what I'm supposed to be doing, then who am I without it? Yeah. And I always had people telling me, oh, you'll be fine after you're done. You're smart, whatever, you work hard, you'll figure something out. So I was just always plan A, no plan B. Yeah. So then it started to kind of crack, and it's just felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. The floor was crumbling all around me, and I had to kind of jump from island to island to keep myself up and not fall all the way down to the pit. But eventually you fall down, you slide down that slope, and it is terrifying. It is, feel like you're dying literally, because that's your ego's wrapped up in that identity. Yeah. So when you fell into that pit, what was your experience? Like, what happened? I mean, I don't know if it was any one time. It was such a gradual thing, but yeah, it just feels like everything you've ever known since 16 to 29, and that's really the memories we have the most of, that kind of early or later teenage years into early adulthood. I had no basis to move forward in. I had felt like I had no resiliency. I had no perseverance. Everything was unfair. Everything wasn't the way it was supposed to be. Why is the world out to get me? Woe is me attitude. All that. And it's really tough because you're told your whole life, wow, you work so hard to get where you are. You're so tough. You're so resilient. You're this tough guy. You fight in hockey and you're so nails. And then it's just like, no, not feeling that on the inside, man. Mm-hmm. Not feeling that at all. And to have your career then just to end abruptly on top of that, on top of like the career going downhill, and then it ends. And then now you're working with a partner and doing something totally different all of a sudden, and just burying the feelings. That's why it doesn't feel like wasn't one moment I hit the pit. It was just more of just burying feelings, stacking all of this stuff. Yes. And if I had to pick one time it culminated, was then going to do mushrooms the last time, where it was just, if that was maybe that was the lowest low, because, and I'm like processing with you in real time right now. maybe that was the lowest low, because then it just kind of felt like
Yeah.
massive existential dread. Like just,
Yeah.
maybe that's the lowest of the low. Yeah.
The who am I really sets in after you've been suppressing these things for a long time. And that's one of the beautiful and also potentially harmful aspects of psychedelics and plant medicine, is that some people might not be ready to look at that. And if they resist it, if they resist what they've seen in those places, it can really make for a challenging life, because once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. That happened to me when I took Bufo. I was just shown out all of my shit. Just immediately, it was just like, here is the book of how you have fucked yourself and how you've been closing your eyes and ears to not seeing it. And then it was like, well, am I going to keep doing that, or am I going to make the painful changes that need to be made in life in order to set myself on a new path? And those changes really have to do with letting go of the original identity of who we thought we were. I thought I was a tech entrepreneur. I thought I was a businessman and a photographer, and some of these identities I had picked up. And in reality, I'm something much different, much more, as are you. And so I'm very curious, what has been the shift in perspective that you're navigating right now from that? Like, where do you stand on this journey?
Well, I saw something yesterday, actually, and thinking about this conversation we're gonna have, that really puts it in a bow of where I think I'm at and where we all are and what I'm leaning on now. And I could read it here. It's rules for being human handed down from ancient Sanskrit. This is exactly what I feel, is that, I received a body. That's what I got given. I'm going to learn lessons. There are no mistakes, only lessons. A lesson will be repeated until it is learned. Learning lessons does not end. There is no better than here. There is no better than here. Others are merely mirrors of you. And this is the biggest one. What you make of your life is up to you. So there's some more, but really that's what I'm leaning on, is that you really have to you put the meaning into it, Yeah. So for me, going through this awakening and diving into mysticism and all the different kind of mystic side of spirituality, and realizing that you can either choose to live from ego, and I've kind of done that, even though maybe it wasn't as apparent to others on the outside. It was for me on the inside, and the lifestyle I lived, and like whatever, like gluttony of eating food, of partying, of girls, of all these things. You can either live that way, but then it just became I can't live that way, and it scares me. My ego wants to live that way. I want to do that. I want ignorance is bliss. I'm going through this grieving now that why can't it just be simple like it was before, and I was oblivious to all this pain and suffering I was a part of and causing. But I just can't now, and that's I'm happy about it, but that's the terrifying part, is that it's up to me to put the meaning in it now, and it's up to me to be selfless and serve others. It's up to me to put in the hard work to be someone who gives more than receives, and that's terrifying to me right now.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying. The amount of work that takes.
I heard this quote last night. The path of maximal responsibility is the path of true adventure. Maximal responsibility. And the way I perceived that, this was a Jordan Peterson quote, and he was talking about how when he meets men or anybody who is trying to find what to do with their lives, he speaks about opt for the path of maximal responsibility, meaning take as much responsibility as you possibly can. Take as much ownership in everything. Maximal responsibility in the shifts in the collective, maximal responsibility in your relationships in your life, maximal responsibility in the work that you do. He said that's the path of the most adventure you can possibly have. It's the most adventurous path. So it is the path that will lead to the most fulfillment and the most feeling alive. And it's also the path of the crucifixion. What did Jesus do? He took the path of maximal responsibility, meaning that he could have, this guy, whether you believe in him as God or have any kind of Christian background, this dude could have very easily just said, my bad, like, just kidding. Like Romans, I don't want to die. Like, I'm not going to push this shit much more. Let me have a break. Or he could have gone off somewhere or anything like that. He's like, nope, they're going to fucking kill me in the most painful way ever if I keep standing in this truth. And he took maximal responsibility and just showed everybody that's possible. And for him, the truth, I believe, was that death can't rule us, that we're not subject to death, and that it doesn't dictate our life, and that it's not something that we should actually fear, because he went like the most painful route you can go. So when I think of this path of maximal responsibility, I look at people who are doing that right now, and it's people who are standing for their truth in really, really radical ways. It's people who are putting themselves out there even when a vast majority of the public hates them. I'm not particularly a fan of Donald Trump, but I see him on the path of maximal responsibility. The dude got shot in the head and he's still like going for it. That, whether you agree with him or not, that's maximal responsibility in his life view. Another example of maximal responsibility to me would be a shaman in the Amazon who's taking medicine and leading people on these medicine journeys over and over and over again until they hit deeper and deeper and deeper truths within themselves and within the collective. That's a hard path to take. The medicine path is one that is very confronting. It is terrifying. And so people who opt for that path are on the path of maximal responsibility. And the amount of adventure that comes from that is huge. And so I love that concept. I'm curious how that lands with you.
Yeah. I think, maybe it's naive to say, but I'm not worried about the dying part. Like, I feel very spiritually sound that way because I know that energy can't be created or destroyed. We're eternal beings. That's why I think for me, like, my dad committed suicide, but that's never on the table for me, because why would I just go back to start of the game again with maybe a lesser incarnation or whatever. It takes billions of lifetimes to have a human birth. Like, I'm here. Yeah. Like, I'm here to live. But the living part, that's what's scary. It is. That's the part, because you're trying to, your inner ego wants to make it as comforting as possible, but you continually know and hear that is the exact opposite, and you have to go against your human nature, your lower nature. So it's that Terence McKenna quote, throw yourself out in the abyss only to find it's a feather bed. It's like, I may intellectually know that, but my limbic system and my humanness is just like, fuck that.
Screaming, you know what I mean? Against
Yeah. It could be pushed down to, like, every time you got to do a hard workout, you're stressed, and you know it's going to be good. You know it's going to feel good after. Like, this is exactly what you need to be doing. But no matter how many times you've been through it, know that it's just pain. It's still something your body shudders at. So I think all of us just have to, like, stick our chests out and, like you said, take on as much responsibility as we can, and just know that we're going to be okay. Regardless if you fail and fall flat on your face or not, you're going to learn something. And actually, the more you take on responsibility and the more you fail, the more you learn. And that's ultimately what we're here to do. It's just so hard to so easy to talk about, but to apply it.
I find myself getting emotional in this conversation because a spiritual awakening is a bitch. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's the fucking hardest thing you'll do. It's the hardest thing you'll do. It's the most worthwhile thing you will do. But the biggest challenge with it is that there is no clear end, because you don't know where you're going with it. You've never been there before. That's the point. And the only way through it is to surrender deeper into it. Surrender deeper into no fucking clue how you're going to make money. No clue if you're going to be homeless or if you're going to be in an insane asylum in the next day or two. Like, I've been there where, like, I went through this this period for probably 3 years where it was a steady, at first, just shattering of every paradigm that I had of like who I was, what this reality was. I was having all sorts of crazy experiences in my mind that could be classified as a mental breakdown. And that's half of the battle with a spiritual awakening is you're like, am I going insane? Or is this like happening for me? And the answer is both. And it's how deeply you surrender into the faith of something bigger than yourself guiding the process and stop trying to control it, because the ego, it has to like, for me, my spiritual awakening was an absolute beating down of my ego till it finally just said, okay, I'm done. I give up. I can't do it anymore. Clearly this, like anytime I would try to take control myself, it would hurt. It would hurt worse than if I just let go. And that letting go brings up so many fears. Like the fears are huge. And the beautiful thing is you and I are having this conversation from a perspective of someone who is in the middle of that right now, and the perspective of another human being who has gone through that and is on the other side of it. And I want to give you and the listener, if anybody else finds themselves on this, a lot of hope that the person you become from this experience is unstoppable in so many ways. You truly do conquer death. You truly do conquer a level of knowing in yourself that no one can take away. No one can take these truths away from me that I have found because I had the courage to go there. And no one can take the truths from you that you are finding by having the courage to step into the unknown so deeply that when someone comes up to you and they're like, you need to do blank, blank, or in your life, you're like, you have no fucking clue. I've already gone there. That doesn't work. And the only thing that works is for us to find empowerment within ourselves. And then once you have that empowerment, nothing they say on the news can affect you. Nothing that someone around you is saying can hurt you, because it's a level of truth within yourself that is unshakable. And then it allows you to start actually living the path of service, because like even my experience has been unraveling myself to be able to do this podcast, to be able to show up every episode with a deeper level of vulnerability, a deeper level of willingness to be seen that hits levels of terrifying for me every time I put one of these out. And then I up level to the next one. But because I've gone through that process of moving in with my parents and having no idea where I was going, but just being in such deep surrender and faith in the process without trying to force it, getting through to the other side and seeing that the other side was even more beautiful than anything I could have possibly imagined. Like, I haven't met a person who's gone through a spiritual awakening and made it through to the other side that hasn't said, holy shit, my life looks nothing like what I thought it would look like, and it's 1,000,000 times better. And all like the bitch of it is that there is no timeline on when that happens. It's like you said, you're a body here to learn lessons. How quickly you learn the lessons is up to you. And sometimes you can't even, like when you try to learn the lesson faster, that's the ego as well, you know? And so then it's just this path of like, I was atheist before DMT. I'd been raised Catholic and then completely like changed my views until I was full blown atheist. I was like, there's nothing I would consider myself a nihilist. I was like, none of this means anything. It's all fucking meaningless. I am just the tiniest speck on a speck floating in an infinite abyss, and not a single action I make matters at all in the grand scheme of things. Then I do DMT, and it's the complete opposite. It was like, holy shit, I'm everything. Every action I take, every breath I take matters more than anything else. And that's a very big overhaul. So I'm curious how all of this is landing with you. I just dropped a lot of A lot of learnings from the other side.
Yeah, I was getting in the first kind of part of that. I was getting emotional too, like, because I just had a weekend with a friend I hadn't seen in a long time. He's getting married in the new year, and he just kind of had like a summer celebration. And, I'm there and I'm with folks, and you just, when you're going through that awakening, you're just like seeing everything differently. So you're just seeing people with kids, and you're seeing people going through different things. And then my friend is kind of just beginning to see some slivers of light, I think, of this. And the whole highlight of my weekend is the 2 conversations we had that are just like this conversation. And I go from being kind of like, I'm chill, I'm on my bipolar meds, I'm just kind of being positive. And then I talk to him and I just light up like a Christmas tree, because this is what speaks to my heart right now. This is what I'm going through. And so just talking to you even about this, like even before coming on, I was feeling definitely a lot of anxiety just about again, ego gripping on too tight. Like Alan Watts says, there's a difference between faith and belief. When you go into the water, do you scratch and claw at the water and hold on to it? Do you grip onto it? No, you trust enough to learn to swim, to use the water and relax into it. And I'm just been gripping the water at times. And then other times I'm like, hey, this is the point. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard, but relax into it. So just even having conversations like this, that's why community is so damn important, man. God, it's so important, like, and you're doing your brothership thing, maybe I'll have to join that, but
I'd love to have you in.
I think that's definitely something I need to do, because I just need that community of people that are going through this, man. It's so huge. We cannot do this journey alone. We cannot. We have everything in us, but we are here to share and to experience and to learn with each other.
Yeah. That's the ego path too, thinking you can do it alone. I know without a shadow of a doubt, without some key people in my life, I would not be here.
Me too. Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
And some of those people are still in my life. And the beautiful thing is some were just messengers along the path. I thought they were going to be long-term people, and they ended up, we were just there to like have that little catalyst, off to the next level of growth. And it's over here. And for that person, it's over here. And that's beautiful. We triggered each other in the perfect way. And then I meet another one. And sometimes they stay in my life, or sometimes it's over here. And then, we keep that game going. And I heard a really beautiful thing from a guy named Garrett White, who does Wake Up Warrior, which I fucking love that program. I'm in that right now, and I'm getting a lot of value out of it. And he talks about his spiritual awakening, and one of the questions that he asked himself during that awakening is, who am I? Who am I? And the truth he got to at the very fundamental core level was, we are the stories we tell to ourselves. That's it. It's who we believe we are. It's as simple as that. And as we change the story, who we are changes. And so the challenge that most people have in life is that they listen to the story and then try to take actions from that story, as opposed to listen to the story, decide if that story is still true for them by looking at what they actually want, by getting very clear on what do you want, and what do you truly want, and then you get to look, does that story support you accomplishing what you actually want? And if the answer is no, then you got to write a new story. And it's very easy actually to write a new story. People find it hard. They're like, I've had in my own life where I have these stories. I'll see if I can find an example of one. Which one do I want to choose right now? Oh, we'll go with money. I have stories around money, had stories around money. Whereas it's hard to sell clients, or it's hard to bring on somebody at my level of coaching. Like I have a hard time finding them, or I don't know where they are at. Those are all stories. Hard time finding them. I don't know where they're at. It's hard to sell this kind of thing. Well, what do I truly want? What I truly want is to be in places regularly that I'm meeting people that can be clients. I truly want for my selling to be effortless. I truly want it to happen with ease and grace. And I have a pipeline of people that are ready to buy. So I'm just painting a hypothetical example here. This is relatively true for me. It's not the specifics, but it's pretty close to it. And so if I look at that original story, it's hard to sell. I'm not in the right place, all these things. Does that get me what I truly want? Well, hell no. Of course it doesn't. So then I've got to write a new story. What's that new story? That new story is I am in the right place at the right time to meet these people. People want to buy from me. It's easy to sell. I have a pipeline of people. So then, is that true for me right now? Probably not. Or I wouldn't be telling that old story. So what do we got to do? We got to actually create the evidence of it being true. So from that new story, you actually set an action. What is one action I can take right now that will make that story true? What's one thing I can do that's simple, that I can knock out in a short amount of time to completely show that story is true? Because we are infinite creators. We can make anything happen. So it's like, well, what's one action I could do? I could go live on Instagram and trust that puts me in the right place in the right time. Or I can I can ask a friend for a contact for a dope podcast guest named Kurtis, who puts me in the right place in the right time. Those kinds of things. That type of stuff is rewriting the story. And as we rewrite the story, we become that person. And so it really is a beautiful experience of asking the question, who am I? Because the answer is, who do you want to be? And so I'm going to ask that to you right now. I know it's a very confronting question, but who do you want to be?
I know. I think that's a good part is I think I know exactly the framework of who I want to be. I want to be someone who is fulfilled in service. I want to be someone who is content, at peace, motivated, excited, in joy of serving other people the way I was when I played hockey and serving myself.
Wow.
So you would think if you can do that for yourself, and now you're going through awakening, you should be able to do that for others, and I just got to find that offering and that gift, which I think I kind of know, but I'm scared of.
What is it
and that's
scared of?
That's ultimately what it is. Yeah, it's probably like public speaking, and writing a book and telling my story and how it could probably impact a lot of people in hockey and in life in general, and every time I talk at a high level with someone like you or I talk about things, it just kind of comes out, and then I'm in my own space by myself, and it's like,
yeah,
it's like the mountain, right?
Yeah.
To climb.
What if you're already doing it? What if even right now on this podcast, with how vulnerable you're showing up, it takes so much fucking courage. It takes huge balls to come on a podcast and share that you're in the middle of a spiritual awakening and here's what you're going through. I remember when I was going through mine, I didn't want anybody to know about it because I was like, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. And I'm terrified all the time. And even to the point of like feeling fear that if I shared something that was happening in my story, that it would like make it true, like, oh, am I manifesting this or all those kinds of things. So it kept me hiding. And so when you speak about your desire to serve and to serve with your words, I believe that story is unfolding right now. And I imagine the listener hearing this will receive that as such. I experienced this as service deeply from you. Deeply. So what a blessing. We're seeing real time where what I just shared about who who am I is true. You are making it true by your actions. And that's part of the spiritual awakening process, is choosing who you want to be and then taking actions towards that. And oftentimes that's the scary part, is you're going to take actions that are radically different than the person that you were before the awakening. And most of the time, those actions go right in the face of what you think is safe from an ego perspective. Who will people think I am? What will people think about me? I remember when I got done with Bufo, I came off of Bufo, woke up, and the first thought I had was, what the fuck have I done? What the fuck have I done? And I almost started crying because I was so scared of the mask of who I was had been blown off so hard that I could not show up again with that mask on. And I was so scared to go to my family and say, here's the real me. I've been hiding that from you for my whole life. And what will they think of me? Will they still love me? Will they still be in my life if I show up without this mask of how I've been showing up for so many years? And for the first week after Bufo, I didn't talk to them. I didn't say anything. I was trying to integrate it, trying to figure out, could I find something? Could I put a mask back on of any kind? Like, what do I do? I was just like completely lost. And I reached out to them on text message in a family group chat. And my family's super conservative Catholic, and they don't do plant medicines. And in the past, I imagine they even had kind of a negative viewpoint towards plant medicines. Now, not so much. But at the time, it was very taboo for me to reach out to my family and say, hey, everybody, I want you to know that I did Bufo alvarius. You can look it up here. Here's an article. It's a very extreme psychedelic. And on the other side, I've changed. There's no going back to who Scott was before that experience. And I started crying as I was typing it. And I was like, my biggest fear is that you guys are going to see the real me and not love me anymore. And to even have the vulnerability to share that with my family was 10 out of 10 terrifying. And the response I got back was, we're having family dinner in a day. We would love to have you come. Like every one of my siblings sent me a message of, I love you and can't wait to see you and would love to have you at family dinner in a day from now. It was not the response I was expecting. And I fell apart in that moment. I just sobbed on my living room floor because I was experiencing for the first time love for the true me. And I think everybody is waiting actually to love the real us, the real you, you know? I think everybody can see it, but us oftentimes. Like, I think everybody knew who the real me was and could see that I had a mask. I was the only one that thought no one could see that I was wearing a mask. But how many times do you meet people and you're like, oh, that's not the real them? Like they're not showing up the way that I know the real them could or would. We can all see that about each other. What's coming up for you?
Yeah, it all just depends. I guess that's just having compassion for where they are in their journey, right? Like knowing that if I lived that life that they lived and had the experiences they had, that I would have that same mask on right now. You know, even for me, like when this is a change for me, it's like even when you bring up Trump, like I was someone that went way down hardcore into like really hating on people, and he was, you know, exhibit A. So yeah, for me, even just like sitting here and you mentioning him and me now jumping in and being like, well, I'm not that guy though. Like, no, why is he in any exception? He's just this human soul playing his part in this crazy play.
Exactly.
And I don't agree with how he shows up, but if I'm gonna, God, that's just a one-way ticket to life and hell. And honestly, is if you're just gonna be judging and thinking that you're any different or would be any different had you been raised in that incarnation, you know, with what he's been through. So yeah, just having compassion for people around you that mask is on. It's just, if they want to take it off, great. And if they're not gonna, and they're gonna flip you off and be rude to you, then it's just like, that's okay too. You do you, and I'll meet you where you're at.
It takes far more courage to play the bad guy. It takes way more courage because deep down, we all want to be loved. The last thing any of us wants is to go up on a national stage and have millions and millions. Like, that would crush most people. Honestly, it would. Most people can't survive a handful of people not loving them. That's the truth. That's the truth. Most people can't survive that, let alone having millions and millions and millions of people hate this person to the point of wanting to kill him. Whether you like him or not, it takes so much courage. This dude's a billionaire. He has every ability to go sit at his Mar-a-Lago resort and watch the waves roll in and drink Mai Tais and say, fuck it. And you could say that it's an ego game that he's playing, trying to get to this power? And the answer is yes. And at the same time, it's far easier to play the other game. It is way fucking easier.
Yeah, I mean, he's either really courageous or that ego lost narcissistic. It's
I think
whatever it is.
Even if he's that narcissistic, it still takes courage. You can be narcissistic, but that does not mean that you have the courage to go do that shit. And so I think that here's why I'm passionate about this, because honest to God, I don't want him to win. I'll be directly honest. I want RFK to win. That's who I want to win. I am very pro RFK. But at this point, for me, the game is to look at anywhere that I see somebody that I get triggered by, no matter who they are, to look at why I'm getting triggered, and then to go, where is that within me? Or where do I think that that's wrong? Because the triggers can be one of two games. Either it's in me and I'm unconscious of it, and so I see it in the other and I'm like, I don't like that. Or I've been taught it's wrong to be this way, and so I don't give myself permission to be that way, even though secretly I want to be that way. Those are the only two outcomes of that. That's projection game. So a whole half of the country or more, or I don't know how many people, are looking at this individual and seeing a projection of something that they get to look at within themselves. And until they can find respect for this individual, for the game they're playing, they're missing a really, really important part of growth. And we're going to keep seeing this play out in the collective until a majority of us see this within ourselves, so that we can decide as a collective, we don't want to play this game anymore. We don't want to play the game of two-party politics. We don't want to play the game of popularity contests for our leaders. We don't want to play the game of calling names and dumb shit. We want to play like the conscious, loving, connected adults that we are. So we bring about peace in this planet, not more war, not more suffering.
Not more division,
Yeah.
Like you said, it's if you're gonna judge him, you're pushing down the part of you that is narcissistic, has all these urges and all these things, and the only way to transcend that is to see that in yourself and to recognize that in others, and you can put it in the right place. You can rise above it. And if anybody's ever going to make, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was doing a peaceful protest, and he just sat in front of a big corporation and meditated every day for the amount of hours people were there. And the first week or two, nobody, this guy's crazy. But after a while, the people who start walking in that building going, who are you and what are you doing? And he's, I don't agree with the policies of your company, yada, yada, yada. And they're like, oh, right. And they keep kind of going, and then it starts to get in. And that's the only way to make change in this world, is to see and have compassion for others, that we are them and they are us, and they're just lost in their own journey.
So I'm going to ask a very confronting question for you and the listener. What's wrong with being a narcissist?
I guess to play along, I guess what's wrong with being a narcissist, if it's I think that's a process we all have to go through, but I guess if you're not worried about others, you're fine with stepping on others to get where you want to go.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I mean, I think it's wrong because you're serving yourself over you're gaining from something and you're taking away from others. I guess that would be the problem with it.
How is it possible to take away from others?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, you hear a story about Trump, for example, like I remember hearing when he first won the election, and just little shitty things he's done, and you don't know if they're verified or not, or people pass along, but let's just say this is true. He hires a small boutique architecture company to build his golf course clubhouse, and then they don't get charged the bill till they're done. So they're done, they've drawn up the plans, they build the place, and then they go for their they're owed money, and he only gives them like 20% of what they quoted him at. And then he's like, yeah, deal with it. Go to court with me. You'll lose. So take your money and shut up. So like for something like that, you sit there and go, I mean, that seems like he's taking something from someone, but
yeah, taking advantage of someone. I've found in my own life, like we could go down this inquiry thread for a while, and I imagine we'd find some really interesting truths, but I'm going to cut to the chase here and just share that I've found in my own life, anytime I've called somebody else a narcissist, it's because I was very happy to take the victim stance. I was victimized by that person. That's what the title narcissist implies, is that there was a victim. And to me, someone can be a narcissist all day long and it doesn't fucking matter, because if I am strong in myself, if I'm empowered in who I am, if I'm empowered in my truth, they can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. It's not going to affect me because I'm not going to compromise who I am to get something from this person. You know, if someone has a certain reputation, but then they come to me and they're like, here, I want to do an architecture deal with you. And I'm like, I really want the look, I want the name brand and I want the money, even though something in the background saying I shouldn't do this deal. Are you the victim? Are you really? On some level, yes, but you put yourself in that position. And that doesn't make what happened there right. Let's say that happened. We have no idea if it did or didn't. But for us to be championing the idea that people are victims is fucking dumb to me. It really is. That's the, like, if we're talking about maximal responsibility, that's the hill I'm fighting on. Is that we are the divine creators at the end of the day, and we create everything around us. We've chosen it. And someone can make the argument that, like, well, did a baby choose to, be aborted, or did a baby choose to get bombed in a war? Or with what's happening in Gaza. Was that baby a victim? I believe, yes. I believe that there is a certain point where we have enough conscious awareness that we can transition and take ownership when we become adults. Whatever age that is varies between person to person. And I'm constantly working with this construct that I have right now around this. But I do believe there's an age that we transition, and it takes a bit of time, but we go from being highly dependent on other people to help us make decisions, informed decisions. And then we transition into being able to consciously make our own decisions. Once that transition has happened, we're no longer victims. We're choosing everything. And so I think this even gets to the point of like the gender debate with children and all this kind of stuff. Like, should they be able to switch their genders and things? Well, have they reached a point of truly being able to make a conscious choice for themselves where they're not a victim of these types of things? Or have they not? We call that age 18, but there's no scientific standing that it's 18. It's probably a gray area somewhere in the teens that this happens, depending on certain life circumstances that people have gone through. But the point here is someone a victim of a narcissist as an adult? They can be, but they put themselves in that situation. I've talked to many women who have been rape victims. And when I talk to them in depth about this, I ask, by the way, I've also been a victim of that myself. And I know that I put myself in that situation. I took steps that ultimately my insides were screaming at me not to do. But I was like, shut up. I need to do this for whatever reason. And it put me in a compromised position. Does that make it happening right? No. Does that mean that the person who did it shouldn't be held accountable? Fuck no, they should. But to say that I'm a victim of it, I'm not going to own that. And I'm really I'm standing strong on that hill. And so when we look at Trump and call him whatever we call him, that's actually just our own disempowerment coming through.
That's seeing yourself from the ego view and the lower self view. Because if I sit here and listen to that, and then you see everything from a higher view, that we're, again, given a body, here to learn lessons. The same lesson will be repeated until it's learned. And lessons will never stop being learned. Like, this is everything that happens is exactly what's supposed to happen for you to learn and come back to unconditional love. So You take it into example, like you said, of not hiring Trump per se, but if you do for your thing and he screws you, well, then there's the lesson that you better get on board with learning, because if not, you're just going to mope and sink your business instead of getting proactive and being not a victim. That's the hardest part, right? That's the hardest part for everybody. And the hardest part of spiritual awakening is going through this. And, how can, as a soul, we come here and have these soul contracts to fulfill, to come down and learn all these lessons. Well, it's hard to get that. And before I was, how could there be a God if there's all this awful things in the world? What God would allow that to happen? But that's the education you have to do. And when you start to see the cracks and everything and the spiritual seeking you start to see that God is just at play, just to know itself from every possible angle. So then therefore every possible thing can exist, good or evil.
And you can also look at the atrocious things that happen and see how much we as a collective are still responsible for them happening. Even from natural disasters, which aren't happening that often. They really aren't, but how many of them are actually man-made? We might not even know, but the odds are pretty good that it's a high degree.
Yeah, they've gone up like a crazy amount of percentage since 1902.
Isn't that interesting?
Or whatever it is.
Isn't that interesting? Since massive changes in technology and human activity have happened, we have more natural disasters. What is our responsibility in that? But, when we talk about most of the disasters, people go quick to natural disasters, which I believe don't have as many casualties associated with them as just all the disasters that are human associated, from bombing to war to disease to all of these types of things. Those take far, far more lives. Well, we are at the cause of that. We're not a victim to that. These truths are fucking hard to see, because what it means is that it's going to confront everything you know about who you are. And that's what you're going through in this spiritual awakening right now, is like a shattering of that paradigm. And so, of course, people, when they hear these truths, are like, fuck you, no, because they don't want to see that. They're like, if I agree to that, that means everything about my world has to change right now. Fucking scary.
Yeah, it's the fear of success that we all have. Basically, once it comes down to that, you realize you are not a victim and never have been and never will be. It's like, holy shit, I have a lot of responsibility all of a sudden. Nothing is ever been given to me, nor will be given to me. And I have to forge it from scratch right here going forward, because I can't go back to living the other way. Like you said, you can't go back to putting the mask on, because if you do, you're just delaying the suffering. You'll forget again, but then it's going to smack you in the face again until you wake up.
It's ultimately the greatest gift, because like I said, once you figure that game out of how to build from nothing, how to create, how to truly generate and be the creator of your reality, no one can take that from you. No one can take it from you.
Yeah. That's where we're trying to get to. And it sounds like, the journey's never over, but you've gone through a big, obstacle there. And then I'm like smack dab in the middle of that and trying to figure out, okay, like I have this chisel and a little hammer and I got this boulder in front of me. So I better start. There's no delaying and procrastinating and avoiding is not going to get this thing chipped to pieces so I can get through it.
Yeah. And the other beautiful thing is there's no right or wrong way to do it. There's a lot of, during a spiritual awakening, giving yourself permission to just fuck around and fuck it up is really supportive, because society puts so much pressure. You're just putting another mask on. If you force yourself into another identity quickly, because there's this pressure to figure it out, pressure to make money, pressure to succeed, all of these kinds of things, you're actually just playing the game again, only to go through it again at a later point in life.
That's where I'm at right now, dude. Holy cow. That's where I'm at, man. I mean, frick. I was smart enough with my money, invested on some things, and have enough that I could, stay here at my mom's and minimal spending for a couple of years. Yeah. But I just kind of feel like, I don't know, there's not much else to do but forge forward. So it's hard to know whether you're putting on another mask or, I went to Guatemala and had an, super depressive, awful mushroom experience and all these, but also good because you're not a victim. Like we're going to correct that language. It was good, but it's just hard to tell whether to, you know, continue to go travel or to, it looks like what I'm going to do is I played junior hockey here in this town I'm living in. It's funny enough, my mom moved here after I was done playing here, but they hired a whole new coaching staff and I've signed up in a way of just informally, I'm not getting paid or anything, but to be like their mentor to the guys. Like a player that's played there, that's been there, that's gone through all this, that they can be there for them kind of in a way. And I'm taking an integrated health coaching course online because I feel like that's a way to, you know, strengthen my skills of talking to people and stuff. And I don't think going to school for 8 to 10 years to get masters and PhDs in psychology is the way. So I'm not committing to anything, which I guess is good. So I guess I'm talking out loud here, and this is like what's going on in my head. But like I'm not committed to anything. It's all informal. I'm not getting paid. I'm doing this course on my own time. I'm helping out with this team, and I can just dip out whenever. So I guess that's good. So I'm not locking myself into anything. I'm just trying to explore and see what my offering is going to be. How can I show up? How can I, you know, help 11% of the 12% of the population's clinically needs psychotherapists and psychologists and psychiatrists, whereas the most of society has depressed mood and they have things that just need to have some community and somebody to like hold them accountable in a coaching aspect, right? So that's where I'm seeing it, and maybe with my experience, I could learn from the guy who played hockey. That's cool. So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out. So I'm glad I just did that in real time. I'm not locked into anything. So something changes, I can go with it, I guess.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with committing all in on something. It's really, where did you commit from? Did you commit from scarcity and fear of like, fuck, if I don't do this, I'm going to go broke. Or if I don't do this, blank. But that's really the betrayal. But if it's like the thing that you're like, I'm so terrified to do this, I have no idea how this is going to sustain me. I don't know where the fuck I'm going, but I'm going anyways. That's actually a great indicator that you're on the path.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel, man. Because I could go get some sales job or something like that, and that would be putting a mask on. That would be,
of course.
I could always
right back in the system. Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
And there's your backstop. That's how you know, like, okay, I'm safe to keep going because I could go do this.
I could go do anything. I could, you know, and there's nothing wrong with being a householder or working a job like that if that's where you're at, and accepting your role and doing it in service to others and to God. Be a freaking plumber and serve the shit out of people. You know, it doesn't matter. It's just for each individual in their journey. Yeah, being this mental performance coach for this hockey team and doing this coaching and staring at having to do a private practice and maybe being a speaker. Oh, that's what scares the shit out of me. So and therefore that's what I need to do. Yeah. And by following that path, who you become is the gift. That's the reward. That's the reward. I like this metaphor of like sharpening your blade. It's, you know, when you go to make a sword, it's not gentle. They pound the shit out of that thing. Then I put it in the fire again, and they pound it again, and they put it in the fire and pound it again. Those of us who are here to truly serve need to be able to take hits. We need to be able to not bend under pressure, or not break under pressure. We need to be able to bend, but not break. Mm-hmm. And so I want to double back on something, if you're open to sharing it. And that is, I'm curious what happened on that mushroom trip to Guatemala. Mm-hmm. Or what happened on that trip. Yeah. I don't know, dude. The first two I had were probably the result of ignorance is bliss. The first two times I did mushrooms, because it was very much like, wow, this is just way bigger than I thought it was. It's everything. We are everything. And I could... You know, I was sitting at the edge of a race, and I could choose to go like, you can go the ego way or you can go the love way. And I just wasn't ready to go the love way. I thought I was, but that was the ego masquerading. Like, yeah. But this time doing it was just, there was no unity with the divine. There was no becoming one. It was extreme separateness. And sitting there as my brother's friends, the shaman and his partner, are giving me the sound journey and all that stuff, and I'm just sitting there in this tornado of whatever it is. And I'm just sitting there going, just surrender to it, surrender to it. If you surrender to it, you'll get that kind of blissful experience again. And I don't know if I was surrendering, if I was, I don't really know, but all I know is that nothing happened. I just sat there through 6 grams of mushrooms and was just
that's what heroic does.
And I was just like, what is this it? Like, where's the feeling of oneness? Where's the love? Where's the at peace and the sigh of relief of just a break of this depression? It was like, nope. And then I started to come down, and he's like, let's go up to this outlook, this 280-degree look over Lake Adelan, Guatemala, 3 volcanoes, the most beautiful view. And I'm like scrambling up this mountainside barefoot, like I'm all out of it. And we get to the top, and I'm just sitting there just like, and it's just dead quiet. He plays a little bit of the flute, and then we're just sitting there dead quiet. I'm like, is this it? Like, this is awful. Like, this is existential dread. I don't know what's going on. Like, what's the point of anything? So yeah, that was a lot. And I guess that's what was showing me that it's just like, hey, you've been here, you've done the mushrooms before, you know the answers now. What are you doing? Like, wasting your time just getting up here, just get to work basically on your life. Yeah. But it was not fun.
Thank you for sharing that. It takes courage to share the challenging plant journeys, because you sometimes you remember it. You go back into it a little bit. At least I do.
Yeah.
I haven't had a great plant medicine experience. I love them for what they show me, but even my last mushroom ceremony I did, which was in November of last year, or a little bit sooner than that. I think it was around November of last year. It was dark as fuck. It was so fucking dark. I like the whole thing. I'm like, no bliss, no love. It was just pure like, here is the hell that lives inside me. I'm like, oh my God, that's terrifying to see, but it's also very empowering to see, because that's there. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to see that. And the point is to see it, and to see that you are strong enough to do that, to hold it, to live with it, to love it, to explore it, you know? And I talk about that often on the podcast, is us seeing our darkness, and not being afraid of it is another path of maximal responsibility. To go look at what we are capable of is a path of maximal responsibility, because we have to see these things about ourselves, or we're going to perpetually repeat them unconsciously, because they're there. You're just unconscious to it.
Yeah.
And so I repeat this one often on the podcast too, because I want people to have the courage to go into those spaces. Oftentimes people don't want to sit in silence, don't want to meditate, don't want to do medicine ceremonies or things like that, because they're afraid of what they're going to see. Yeah, it's fucking scary. And at the same time, you can hold it. You won't see anything on a plant medicine ceremony that you can't sit with.
All evil comes from man, just as goodness comes from man. And if you're not aware of it, you can't rise above it. You're going to act it out. So, I mean, thank goodness, I was raised so well by my mom. And like you've said before, we didn't have certain people. If I didn't have my mom, I'd be a monster.
Yeah.
It would have been a scary, scary thing. But even saying that, you know, I think you shared this before. I think I watched something, or maybe we spoke about it, but just like even the porn, man, like, you know, to see that darkness in you from that aspect, and, you know, being like 8 years old and having access to that, like like, you know, I'm like 8 years old, innocent kid. I'm like downloading music off LimeWire, and then I download some like pirated like porn movie, and my brain lights up like, what the hell is this? And and then you just see the whole world through that lens for so long, but you have to see that darkness that's there and accept it. It took me a long time to kind of accept that, and now it's finally been months and months and months that I'm off that, and you know, but you have to go through that. You have to go through it.
It's a journey. It's hell. The withdrawal symptoms from porn are intense.
Yeah,
intense.
Like that lust, like, you know, my brother, we were talking about like the different levels of hell or whatever it is. And even though I don't believe in a hell, but if we're going to talk about it, it's just like hell is on earth. And it's like that lust is just like a tornado where you never find any rest. Yeah. It's just like you're constantly moving. Like there's no rest. Yeah. It's ridiculous, man.
It's like a hunger that to be conquered. Never satiated.
No. No. But that's kind of how where I'm at now. I'm having that, what's that word? I don't always pronounce it wrong, adahonia or whatever. Like you just have no pleasure in things anymore. Like you're not finding pleasure in things that you used to. All those things are dropping away from me. Like all of them. The last thing I'm cutting on is like food. The last thing that I'm like cutting that awareness to. I'm just like sex, drugs, all these things are just falling away. Like just shutting off of me. And I'm like, I guess this is good though, because it gives me so much more space in my life to create and to go do things and to then dive into things like wholeheartedly and not be distracted all the time. So I can see how that process is happening, but I don't necessarily like it either. It's just like, fuck, man, is there any joy in this? But I guess that's the joy is going to be in the service. Like I feel like I'm like setting the table for that to be my source of joy, but I'm not there yet, and want almost that ignorance is bliss again. I'm still pulled to like, man, it was just easier that way.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not ignorant anymore, and I know that this is the way.
You know, I always think about the movie The Matrix when I am like in this space with somebody, and like that character who he had taken the red pill and then he went and took the blue pill so that he could go eat steak again, but he knew ultimately that it was fake, it wasn't real, and so he couldn't actually find fulfillment in it once he had seen. But what I want to give people hope on, which I don't think The Matrix does a great job of, at least in the first movie, is that it's not just darkness, hell, seeing all the evil. That's a period of it. It's a period of the game. But on the other side is true fulfillment. It's actually Plato's allegory of the caves, where once the prisoner is released and they're no longer seeing the shadows and they get out into the sunlight, they see the real world. And the fulfillment from seeing the real world, the stake in the Matrix will never have pleasure or fulfillment in it again. But the pleasure and fulfillment that you get from living so intimately with life words can't express it. It's not expressible. Because it's really fascinating when this is one of those things. It's kind of like trying to explain to somebody what a mushroom ceremony feels like. You can't. You can only experience it firsthand. No one can I can tell you about my Bufo experience, but unless you've experienced Bufo, you have no clue. There's no frame of reference. So same for the real world, like actual reality, not the false shit that we've been fed. Once you experience the truth, capital T truth, it's so much more exquisite that you can not only spot the fake shit, but you don't want to touch the fake shit anymore. You're like, ew, I don't want that. Whereas before, when I was going through my spiritual awakening, my death, so to speak, I was like, God, I wish I could just remember with the fake shit, like how much I enjoyed that. You weren't actually enjoying it. If you were, you wouldn't be going through the awakening. That's the lie. The lie is that it was actually enjoyable. And then it's just faith that you have to take it on, that on the other side, there is some much greener grass, that it is way more fulfilling. And I imagine that's the process you're in right now. And that's the one that is the galvanizing process. That's the sword being beaten and stuck in the fire until it's done. And then you have a completed sword that's a work of art that's amazing. And, a sword's meant to be used. It's not like it just always is in the fire and getting hammered on. Every once in a while it needs to be sharpened again, but it's not that process is forever. And it feels like forever when you're in the spiritual awakening because you have no idea when it's going to end. And so I see you in it, and I'm offering a glimmer of hope that your success in this is guaranteed. It's guaranteed. It's not optional. It's not something that maybe you'll get it. You have tasted truth and there's no going back, and you won't stop until you get there. That's the thing. It's obvious. Because once you start down this path, there is no stopping. The only, even killing yourself doesn't stop the process. Once you've started it, you're going. You're on this consciousness evolution path that will transcend lifetimes. It's now there is no going back. It's not like you can reboot the game. And that's fucking awesome. That's really cool.
I guess the idea is just, yeah, we've always been on this path. Like Ram Dass says, all of us have just been, once you realize all of us have just, all of what we're ever going to do for the rest of eternity is sit around the fire and just with community try to raise ourselves. So hopefully I woke up at, 30, let's say. Hopefully the next life, it's, if I don't reach that, it's 15, it's whatever. Yeah. You're just trying to chop it down. You're trying to, and that's what I think is so inspiring about all this, people who live from that place of ego and all these things and nothing matters. And they say, well, if God is a good God, he wouldn't have all these bad things. It's like, no, like this is how you get on this path, is that you see that every life, this lifetime's not going to end. And then it's going to be, you're done. Yeah. You're on this continual journey. So that's why there's so much impetus to serve, to come to these truths, because you realize you're going to be doing it forever anyway. Do you know
exactly.
what I mean? Like
and those bad things are catalysts to the awakening. If everything was comfortable and hunky-dory, you'd be stuck in that prison for the rest of eternity.
It'd be boring as hell. Nobody wants to play Grand Theft Auto with the cheat codes. You do it for like 2 seconds and then it gets boring.
And then it's old.
It's that Alan Watts, thing he says, where if you could dream any dream, you would dream every dream possible. You would dream every lifetime, every role, be a rock star, be this, be that. And eventually you get bored of that. So you start throwing in the little, I don't know, into the maybe 10% of I don't know into this to get some excitement, until finally you would dream this life and incarnation we're having right now, because you don't know what the fuck's going to happen. Fucking sick.
What a fucking ride.
Oh, dude, that gets me going, because that's what it's all about right there. We're dreaming the impossible dream right now.
Amen. And I'm honored and grateful to be dreaming that impossible dream with you. Thank you for that. And I'm curious to bring this thing home. What's the blessing that you're taking away from this period of life you're in right now? What's the thing you are abundantly grateful for with where you're at?
That it's just happening at all, and that it's happening at a relatively, hopefully young age in this incarnation. That's what I'm very blessed about. It could happen at 60. No, it's happened at 30, man. Like Ram Dass happened at like 32 or something. Like who the fuck knows where this journey's going to go? So I'm most blessed and grateful that in this incarnation, whatever billionth it is, that it's this age at this time with this, I feel like I have this giant canvas in front of me to see what I can go on to create, and who knows where it's going to end up. So I'm very grateful for the timing.
Yeah. I was 32 when it happened for me. And
nice.
Greatest gift of my life. No question. It's led to me meeting my true soul partner, the woman I'm truly meant to be with and play this game with. It's led me to service. One of the things that I've heard is you ask God for the ability to serve, and you will serve beyond your wildest imagination. There is no shortage of abundance in the field of service. That is something that you will be gifted with for the rest of your life, and it will ask the most amazing things from you. And that's why it's so fulfilling. I've also heard service is the greatest drug on the planet. I would agree with that. And that if you're an addict, one of the best ways to channel that is to channel it into service. Get addicted to service, and then you are using that hunger in support and of the planet and yourself and others.
That's what I want to do. I don't want the ego to hijack it. I want to be in service truly. And whatever my gift is, if my gift tends to be somewhat more of like, your coaching, your speaking, like that's a slippery slope, man, to be on it. You don't want to get too wrapped up in it. I want to make sure I do it from service, regardless of what I end up doing. It doesn't really matter what it ends up doing, just if it's in line with what your incarnation's gifts are, I guess.
Do you see how you're in service right now? Can you see that?
I think so, yeah. In podcasts and being vulnerable, that's something I've always seemed to have taken to really well. So, yeah.
How is that service?
That lights me up.
How is it service to others?
Well, hopefully it lights them up, or lights a seed or a spark in them to be vulnerable too, which we spoke about in our intentions for this podcast is what we're trying to do.
Amen. And how do you imagine that will affect their life?
That they're not in it alone. Maybe it will, maybe this, who knows, this podcast and sharing and gets them down another step down the path of their own awakening and gets them closer to serving others too. So yeah, that's really what all our offerings are, is to just get further others, help others along the path, right?
Yeah. I'm asking these questions because oftentimes one of the things I found in my journey was I was like, well, I will be serving when? I'll be of service at this future point in time. The future doesn't exist. You will never be in that place. You can only serve from the present moment, right now. Right now. So are you serving? Are you fully aligned on the path of service here in this moment? Yes or no?
I guess I'm serving not only myself and my journey and nourishing my soul, but I'm serving hopefully others too.
You've set that intention. So now that's the part of surrendering it, to trust that it is. You know, I put out this podcast I'm still blown away by how many people are listening to this right now and how many people send me messages telling me how much it's changed their life. I'm like, how in the fuck? Like, I just put out some stories about myself vulnerably and raw, and all of a sudden it's turning into this really incredible thing. That's service.
Dude, you're killing it. That's service. Your content you're creating and all that stuff, you're on the path, man. You're a very big inspiration to me, because you're pretty much doing what I want to do, or what I'm being called to do, I guess. Yeah. So this is probably something, the start of a good relationship between you and me here, and I would love to continue it.
I would love that too, my brother. And I'm just going to keep pointing out and highlighting that you're already doing it.
I'm already doing it.
That's important because, first of all, we talked about the stories that we tell ourselves. Yeah. You tell yourself that you will be serving sometime in the future. You're never going to serve. You're serving right now. And we both have just seen the evidence of that. Do you believe that you can serve at a higher degree? Sure. But it won't start until you acknowledge that you are already serving right now. Yeah. And that
our language is so important. You keep calling me out on it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And this is just I'm doing it so that the listener can see too, that even in listening to this podcast, that's service, because it is sparking something within you, listener, that is going to launch you into your next place of embodiment. And also, beingness is really the truth of service. You serve by who you be. It's just being all the way. That's it. That's the answer to the game. There's
nothing else.
That's the cheat code right there. And some of it is having faith and trust that in being, you are in service. That's one of the things that, for me, was one of the hardest lessons to accept on the spiritual awakening path, was that I was in service simply by being me. That's it. Because in being ourselves, we give permission to others to be themselves. And that's really the truth of this game. Is that everyone who has been pretending to be someone else, when they get to the truth of who they really are, this game really unlocks in a very fun way.
Yeah, I need a conversation like this every day of my life, that's for sure.
Your willingness to be vulnerable is a true superpower, and it is a true service, because oftentimes people will come onto a show like this and try to hide a little bit. They're like, nope, I don't want to show that part. I don't want to be seen that way. I don't want people to think I don't have it figured out. And that's a disservice to yourself and to others. And so I see you very strongly showing up all the way. And I want to honor you in that. And I believe that willingness is going to serve you on what is unlocking for you now. Because I know it's served me. That's the thing that has led to, I've made the most money in my entire life right now by being the most vulnerable I've ever been. I have had the best friendships and the best romantic relationship of my entire life by being the most authentic myself. I've had the most fulfillment by being that. I am closer to my family, my parents and my siblings than I've ever been by being this. And so it really is the path.
You're living it, dude. That's so inspiring. That's so inspiring to hear, because I know you were working at doing that big concert company before and stuff, and to see the change, it's almost like I had my hockey, you had your concert company, then we had our awakening. It's very, very inspiring, dude. And I know that, I'd love to follow in that kind of footsteps in my own way. You're really lighting the path for a lot of people here.
I imagine you are inspiring a lot of people too. I really do. You might not feel it right now because you haven't dialed in what that thing is that you're going to die for is yet. I have that for myself, but you're on the path to it. And to me, the service that you're offering on this podcast, for all the people who are trying to find that path, you're giving permission. And that is such a blessing. I really can't stress this enough, that the vulnerability you're having by coming on here in the middle of the process is epic. And I can't wait to keep this conversation going with you, because this podcast is going to mark a point in your life that you're going to look back on with so much gratitude. And you're going to look back and be like, I fucking did that. And you have it documented in forever. And you get to show it to your kids, and you get to put it as part of your story. That's going to inspire the shit out of people. And it's inspiring right now. And so I can't wait to do another podcast with you here in a few months or a year or whatever, where you've had an up level out of this, you'll be in a new season, and then we'll do another one. You'll be in another season, and it's going to be really cool to have the trilogy of your version of the hero's journey. And this is book 1, and pretty soon you're going to be on book 2, and then you'll be on book 3, and it's going to be amazing.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. This is, again, just for everybody, just step into vulnerability, and you're scared shitless. And really, what's the worst thing that could happen?
What's the worst that could happen?
Seriously, not much. There's always going to be something to fall back on, but why don't we step into what scares the shit out of us? Might as well. Yeah.
Amen. I think that's a beautiful place to wrap this. I would love to ask you, how, if at all, can the listener, if this has spoken to them, reach out to you? Do you want people to connect with you around this episode? Is that something that you're interested in?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me if something I said hits home. If you have something to share along your path, I have my DMs open. I love reading messages. I love connecting. I'm such a social, outgoing person. I get so much energy from people. So it's definitely a blessing when I hear from people like that.
Amazing. So Instagram's a good path for people.
Instagram's the best spot. Yeah. And Instagram's the best spot.
Well, if you have listened to this podcast and Kurtis's message has reached you and his path that he's on, reach out. That's how we create support. And it's really supportive to myself, to Kurtis, to you, listener, when you do that, because we're not alone. We're not alone. And if this podcast really spoke to you, share it with others that might be dabbling on this path or are right in smack dab in the middle of it, or to the other side, because I think there's lessons for it along the way. For me, it's been beautiful to revisit this because it just reminds me of the lessons that I've grown through, and it's always helpful to remember those. So
this is the most interesting topic to every human, whether they know it or not. They just may be having their mask on, or we have compassion for that point of their journey, and other people aren't. But this is the topic. Like when me and my buddy this weekend just step off to the side and end up talking for an hour, we're in a different dimension because it's connecting on a soul level. This is what is the deepest topic known to us. This is the core of it all.
I could not agree more. And Kurtis, what a fucking hard for life moment we had today. Thank you. It's been an honor to have you on the show. And to you, listener, thank you so much for tuning in, and can't wait to see you on the next episode of the Hard for Life podcast. See you soon. Brother.